There were still 4 candidates today in the Republican presidential race, but increasingly the focus was on Rick Santorum and Mitt Romney, after Santorum bested the frontrunner in Alabama and Mississippi. Rick Santorum celebrated his victories last night in Lafayette, Louisiana, and said they make him the one true conservative alternative to Mitt Romney.
The time is now for conservatives to pull together. The time is now to make sure that we have the best chance to win this election. And the best chance to win this election is to nominate a conservative to go up against Barack Obama.
From there, it was off to Puerto Rico, ahead of the primary there Sunday, with 23 delegates at stake. In San Juan, Santorum again argued it's now between Romney and himself. Romney had sounded confident yesterday on CNN before learning he had finished third in both Alabama and Mississippi.
Senator Santorum is at the desperate end of his campaign and is trying in some way to boost his prospects.
Today on Fox, Romney insisted he's still on the road to ultimate victory.
Some who are very conservative may not be yet in my camp, but they will be when I become the nominee, when I face Barack Obama.
And the Romney campaign issued a public memo that said, while Rick Santorum is taking a victory lap after Alabama and Mississippi, the fact remains that nothing has changed or advanced his chances of getting the Republican nomination. In fact, despite Santorum's victories Tuesday, it was Romney who took away the most delegates from the day's contests. According to the Associated Press, Romney earned at least 41 delegates from caucus wins in Hawaii and American Samoa, plus proportional awards in Mississippi and Alabama. That brought his total to 495, more than his 3 rivals combined. Santorum took away 35 delegates on Tuesday, bringing his total to 252. Newt Gingrich won at least 24, giving him 131 delegates overall. Ron Paul picked up just 1 delegate on the night. His total is now 48. Gingrich finished second in both Alabama and Mississippi, raising fresh questions about his ability to continue. But in Birmingham last night, he vowed to fight on.
And the biggest challenge will be raising money because we came in second, which isn't as much as we wanted, and we will have gotten delegates. We'll get, between Santorum and myself, we will get over 2/3 of the delegates, and the so-called frontrunner will get less than 1/3 of the delegates.
Gingrich campaigned today in Illinois, where 69 delegates are up for grabs next Tuesday. The candidates are also pointing toward the Missouri caucuses on Saturday, with 52 delegates to be won.
For more on the contests ahead and the path forward for the Republican hopefuls, we turn to Dante Cheney, director of Patchwork Nation, a reporting collaboration with the NewsHour and others that examines economic, social, and political trends, and NewsHour political editor Christina Bellantoni. Thank you both for being here. Christina, there was thinking ahead of Alabama and Mississippi that Mitt Romney was in the hunt. He had a good chance at winning. What happened?
Well, the campaign felt like he really had a good chance at winning. They devoted a lot of time there. They sent the candidate there. They sent a lot of his surrogates there. And Santorum didn't lead a single poll heading into these 2 races. And they thought, okay, if Romney can win in the South, this will really, suggest that this is done and done. However, what ended up happening was the voters in Mississippi and Alabama basically said that they wanted 2 things in a candidate: strong moral character and true conservative. We've seen that pattern play out in all of these states where Santorum wins those 2 things according to exit polls, but Romney wins the people who want to beat Barack Obama. There were just fewer of those types of people that showed up on Tuesday.
But Mitt Romney had more money, had more television ads up. He had the superior organization. He had big name endorsements.
Yeah, he had, both governors in the state. He had a lot of people out there as surrogates talking about him. He has a lot of congressional endorsements. And the the Romney Super PAC, the Super PAC that's backing him and is not aligned with the campaign, ran 65% of all the ads in these 2 states. And Romney himself ran a lot of ads as well. So they were really putting a lot of effort into this. And it's important to put out that the Super PAC for Rick Santorum, while they advertised far less in both of these states, And the Santorum campaign didn't advertise at all on television in these two states. This was all, him going out and campaigning and earning these votes. And the organization has mattered in other places, but it didn't matter as much last night.
Dante, you've been looking at all these states. Tell us about the kind of voters Mitt Romney is winning over.
Well, what he's done so far, everywhere he's gone pretty much, is he wins, and you see this in exit poll after exit poll, better educated, wealthier voters, and he does well. It's almost like you can go up the income scale and kind of look at Romney's percentage. You can watch it grow and grow. Same is true of education. And the way we look at it through Patchwork Nation, we break the country in these different county types. What that means for us is he does well in these places we call the wealthy suburbs, the moneyed burbs, these places we call boom towns, kind of ex-urban areas that grew very well. College towns he tends to do very well. And then he often does well in big cities. Now, in big cities, in general elections, will go Democratic almost always. But when you're talking about a Republican primary, Republicans come out to vote. There are a lot of wealthier, better educated folks that live in those communities, and they vote for Mitt Romney.
So conversely, Romney is losing which kind of voters?
Yeah, he's struggling with two things. A lot of people talk about the social conservative problem he has. He's not able to win over those cultural issues that Santorum does well, and that's true. But there's also a lot of down income problem that Romney has. So when you get to these lower income places we call small town service worker centers, he doesn't do well in. These places we call evangelical epicenters, obviously a lot of evangelicals, he does very poorly in those places. And these aging, emptying nests, he doesn't do very well in those places either.
And we should mention while we're talking to you that our viewers can see all of this on our website, the Patchwork Nation, regular feature that we have there, where you've got all this broken down. And just quickly, has Romney expanded his appeal among the electorate since Iowa?
No, in fact, you can look at this actually on the map that we have on the Patchwork Nation site, but it really has, we're pretty much locked in a stalemate between Santorum and Romney. If you go back to Iowa, Santorum has won the communities he's won, and Romney has won the communities he's won. And really, Santorum has actually started to pick up a little steam in those suburban areas, but that's about the only change I've seen.
So, Christina, what is the path forward for Rick Santorum? He won yesterday, these two contests. He has some momentum, but Romney's way ahead in delegates.
Right. It's not completely impossible for Rick Santorum to be able to get there with the number in the same way that Romney would be able to almost get there, but it's not as likely when you look at those things. The organization, it remains a difficult thing for him. And one thing I would watch out for is the money, because Santorum is now able to raise a lot of money because of his momentum, particularly because of his wins. You saw he had 2 strong months in January and February. He's probably raising a lot now, and they're not spending a lot of money either. He has a pretty lean campaign operation, and Romney is spending a ton of money, both the super PAC and his organization really having to burn through that with this long race ahead.
So as you look, Dante, at the states that are coming up, Illinois, and a little bit later we've got Pennsylvania, New York.
Right.
The kinds of voters, are they the kind that would advantage Romney?
When I look at Illinois, in particular, like Missouri is this weekend, Missouri could be very good for Santorum. A lot of evangelicals there. Illinois does not look good for him. There's so much based around Chicago, and that's a big city, and there's those wealthy suburbs around Chicago. That should be Romney vote. We talked a little bit before, though. That is Barack Obama's hometown, and you wonder, I've got to look at whether or not it's an open primary, but if Democrats come out and vote for Santorum, just to vote for him. Santorum obviously should do very well in Pennsylvania, but he's going to struggle in places like New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island. I would imagine he'd struggle in those places.
Because?
It's a more urban, wealthier environment. Even Connecticut, you think of the rolling hills of Connecticut, but a lot of Connecticut, I don't know offense to people who live there, it's suburban New York in some ways, and that should be good for Romney.
So, Christina, when we hear Newt Gingrich saying, in fact, I heard him say in an interview today, he said, all 4 of us are going to be in the same place when we get to Tampa and the convention. He said, because none of us is going to have the delegates at that point to clinch the nomination. Is he right about that?
He's partially right. It's really all projections, because if you base what has happened and the types of voters Romney's been able to win, and the percentage he's been able to win and collect these delegates, and these are all proportional states for the most part. There were a few winner-take-all delegate states, but the RNC's rules this year basically doles them out a few at a time. So if Romney keeps getting a third of the voters, he's not quite going to get there, or maybe he'll just barely pass at the very end of June when Utah has its primary. So, in that sense...
Utah.
Yes. But in that sense, that's if the projections hold. But there are a few caveats to that. Texas, there's a new poll out showing Santorum has a lead there. If he's able to get a lot of delegates in that very big state in late May, that could shift things slightly. But what the Gingrich people are really saying, it's the brokered convention message. And it's fascinating the way they're talking about doing this. I've talked to a few people today who basically say they're treating it like a whip operation for a speaker's race. They're trying to target these unbound delegates who are party activists elected at the local level in all of these states to say, vote for us on the second round of balloting. We're going to represent true conservatives. I mean, it's really a lobbying campaign on individual people.
What is the story on these delegates, though? To what extent are they bound to the person they have so far pledged to be with?
This is a great question and one we've been looking at a lot on the show. And I think that in some states, they're totally bound. In some states, it's a little bit more flexible. And in some states, they're not bound at all. And that was the case. We saw that with Iowa, and we've seen that in other places. And the Ron Paul people are actually making a huge effort here. They've been working the Nevada state party level and local party level to be able to get their people within that infrastructure to take those people to the convention that are going to favor them.
The other candidate in all of this, Dante, is, of course, Ron Paul, who we haven't spent a whole lot of time talking about him. What kind of voters is he pulling? We know the numbers are small, but who's he pulling, and is there hope for him in the states ahead when you look at the profile of the electorate?
You can't, I mean, again, if you're going by what's happened so far, you can't think there's a whole lot of hope ahead because he just hasn't done very well so far. Who does he do well with? He tends to do well, actually, with younger voters, obviously. If you go to a Ron Paul event, you'll find a lot of younger voters there. He also does tend to do well with a branch that really isn't about age or income or anything. It's strictly about this libertarian point of view and like anti-Fed, anti-Washington. It's a small group of people. And it's hard to see him doing very well in the primaries that are coming up. But I mean, you know, he's not going anywhere because he's a message candidate. He's going to stick around and get his point out.
Well, the roller coaster continues. Dante Cheney, Christina Bellantoni, thank you both.
Thanks.